I still don't know if she ever loved me, or if I was just another project. Her name was Claire, the kind of woman who didn't just enter your life, she took it over. From the very first day, she seemed to know exactly what to say, what to do, how to make me feel like I'd been waiting for her all my life. And maybe I had, because the first few months felt like something out of a movie. Constant laughter, late-night talks, the kind of connection that makes you forget everything before it. But that's how they get you. They make you feel seen, so they can decide what to take first. It started with little things. She'd ask innocent questions. Do you ever feel like you're too emotional? Or has anyone ever told you that you overthink everything? And I'd laugh, brush it off. But then she'd say it again, weeks later, when we argued. See, you're doing it again. At first, I thought she was helping me. I thought she was teaching me to be calmer, stronger, better. I didn't realize she was rewriting the way I saw myself. She never yelled. That was the worst part. She didn't have to. She'd go quiet, look at me like I was unstable, like I'd lost control, until I actually started to. She'd walk away in the middle of arguments, whisper, "You're scaring me," when all I was doing was trying to explain myself. And somehow, every fight ended the same way, with me apologizing for reacting to the things she caused. Once, I told her she made me feel small. She smiled and said, "You make yourself feel small, baby." I just hold up the mirror. That line stuck with me, because that's exactly what she did. She held up a mirror and forced me to see a version of myself that didn't exist until she built it. I stopped trusting my own emotions. If I felt hurt, I told myself I was being dramatic. If I felt lonely, I convinced myself I was too dependent. She made me believe that everything wrong in the relationship started and ended with me. The people around us adored her. She was charming, gentle, compassionate, the kind of woman everyone described as a saint. So when things got worse, when I started telling friends that something felt off, I could see it in their eyes. They didn't believe me. How could they? Claire was perfect. But perfection is the most dangerous disguise of all. Because underneath that calm voice, behind those soft eyes, she was already tearing me apart. Not to leave me, but to see how far she could push before I broke. And I didn't even realize how deep it went until the day she started keeping secrets I wasn't supposed to find. It didn't happen overnight. That's what made it so terrifying. It was slow, quiet, deliberate. The kind of change you only notice when it's already too late. Claire didn't destroy me with shouting or violence. She did it with kindness, patience, and that soft voice that could make poison sound like poetry. She started with my routines. At first, it was small. I used to go running every morning, 30 minutes alone, just me and my thoughts. She told me it was dangerous to go out that early. I laughed it off, but the next day, she woke up before me, made coffee, said, "Stay home today. Spend time with me." And I did. The next week, she said, "Why don't you run in the evenings instead? It's safer." So I changed my schedule. A few days later, she complained that I was never around at night anymore. So I stopped running altogether. She told me my friends didn't like her, that they made her uncomfortable. I didn't believe it at first. But every time I made plans, she'd sigh, say something like, "I just thought we could have dinner together tonight," or "You always seem happier when you come home from seeing them. Maybe they're not good for you." I didn't even realize I'd stopped seeing them until one of them texted me, "You okay, man? Haven't heard from you in months." Claire read that message before I did. She said, "You know what's funny? He never liked me. Maybe that's why he's suddenly so interested in how you're doing." And I deleted the text without replying. That's how she worked. Not with force, but with guilt. Every decision felt like it was still mine, even when it wasn't. Then came the way she talked about my memory. Whenever I bring up something she said, she'd tilt her head and smile like I was being cute. "I never said that," she'd whisper. Or, "You're remembering it wrong. You always do that." At first, I'd argue. Then I started hesitating. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I did forget things. It's easy to lose yourself when the person you love convinces you that your own mind can't be trusted. She once told me she'd had a terrible dream, that I'd hurt her, screamed at her, made her cry. She woke up sobbing, shaking. I held her, told her it wasn't real. But she looked at me with fear in her eyes and said, "It felt real. It felt like something you would do." I apologized for a dream. That was the night I realized I wasn't living in a relationship anymore. I was living in an experiment. She wanted to see how far she could go, how much she could take before I noticed I had nothing left to give. And the worst part? I didn't even hate her. I pitied her, because I thought maybe if I loved her harder, she'd stop trying to break me. But people like her don't want love. They want to see what love can survive. And soon, I was about to find out what happened when it couldn't anymore. There's a specific kind of fear that comes from realizing you can't trust your own mind anymore. It's not the loud kind. It's quiet, patient, the kind that grows slowly until it's everywhere. That's what life with Claire became. A constant guessing game between what I knew and what she told me was true. It started with her phone again. She'd always been secretive, but lately, she was worse. Always texting, always smiling at something I couldn't see. Once while she was in the shower, I glanced at her screen. I didn't mean to, but curiosity got the better of me. There was a message preview from a name I didn't recognize. Last night was perfect. I froze. My chest felt like it was caving in. When she came out, I asked her about it. She didn't even flinch, just looked at me and said, "You've really got to stop doing this, Ethan." "Doing what?" I asked, looking for reasons to ruin things. "You've always been like this." I saw the message. Her voice went soft, that dangerous, disarming softness she used when she wanted to reset the narrative. "What message?" I told her the name, the exact words. She stared at me for a moment, then sighed. "You must have dreamed it." I laughed, a short, broken laugh, because she said it so calmly like she actually believed it. I didn't dream it. I saw it. She took my face in her hands, looked me right in the eyes, and whispered, "You really need to get some sleep, baby. You're starting to worry me." And the terrifying part? For a moment, I believed her. That's how deep she had gotten into my head. Over the next few days, I started finding little inconsistencies. Perfume that wasn't hers, a shirt I'd never seen before, calls at midnight from unknown numbers. Every time I tried to confront her, she'd twist it back. Maybe you're jealous because you feel guilty about something. Maybe you're seeing things because you don't take care of yourself. You've always had trust issues, haven't you? She'd say it with such conviction that I started to wonder if she was right. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe my mind was breaking, and she was just the one trying to hold it together. I started keeping notes, writing down things I saw, times, dates, details, just so I could prove to myself that it wasn't all in my head. But one night, I came home, and my notebook was gone. When I asked her where it was, she smiled. "What notebook?" That night, I sat in the dark, trying to remember the things I'd written. The details, the evidence, but it all started to blur. Like my brain couldn't tell the difference between real and false anymore. And maybe that was her goal all along. Not to hide the truth, but to make me question whether truth even existed. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek, handed me coffee, and said, "You look tired, love. Maybe you should take a few days off work. Get some rest." And that's when I noticed the faintest trace of another man's cologne on her wrist. But this time, I didn't say anything, because for the first time, I wasn't sure if she'd actually cheated or if she'd made me believe she did, just to see what it would do to me. There's something cruel about being made into a story you didn't write. And that's what Claire did to me. Slowly, meticulously, she began turning me into a version of myself that didn't exist. A man she could point to and say, "See, I told you he's unstable." It began with the recordings. I didn't know about them at first. One evening, during an argument, I don't even remember what started it, she went quiet, then said, "Do you hear yourself right now?" I stopped mid-sentence. She wasn't angry. She looked almost amused. Calm. Her phone was on the table, screen facing down. I saw the little red light blink. She'd been recording me. When I asked why, she didn't deny it. She said, "So you can hear what you sound like when you lose control." The thing is, I wasn't losing control. I was trying to defend myself, to explain how much she'd been twisting things, but somehow, when she pressed play, the recording sounded different. Out of context. My voice sharp, hers calm. My frustration edited into rage. And when she showed those clips to her friends, I didn't know at first, but I found out it made me look exactly like the man she'd been describing to them for months. The unstable boyfriend. The gaslighter. The man who can't control his emotions. Every time I tried to tell someone what she was doing, They'd look at me with that same quiet sympathy people give to someone who's lost their grip on reality. Then things started to go missing. My keys, my wallet, once my work laptop. I'd tear the place apart looking for them, and hours later, she'd find them in the most obvious spots, under a cushion, behind a lamp, sitting right on the kitchen counter. She'd smile, hand them to me, and say, "You really need to start taking care of yourself." It sounds small, right? Insignificant, but it adds up. One misplaced thing after another, until you start questioning if you're actually losing your mind. And that's exactly what she wanted. One morning, I came home from a work meeting, and the apartment looked off. Not messy, just rearranged. Subtle things. My books weren't where I'd left them. The picture frames were slightly crooked. I asked if she cleaned, and she smiled. Know what? That night, she told me she was worried about me. Said I'd been forgetting things, moving things around, accusing her for no reason. She said she'd talked to her friend, a psychologist, and that maybe I needed to talk to someone. That was when I realized she wasn't just gaslighting me anymore. She was documenting it, building a case. Every message she sent, every word she said, was calculated to make me doubt myself, and to make sure no one else ever believed me if I tried to fight back. And I'll be honest with you, it worked. For the first time in my life, I actually wondered if something was wrong with me, if I was broken, if she really was just trying to help. But then one night, around 2 a.m., I woke up and found her sitting in the living room. Laptop open, headphones in. She didn't hear me come in. I saw the screen, folders of videos, voice memos, screenshots. Every one of them had my name on it. She was collecting evidence. Against me. I stood there, watching her, and in that moment I finally understood I wasn't in a relationship anymore. I was a study, an experiment, a living, breathing performance she'd been curating from day one. She looked up, saw me, closed the laptop slowly, smiled that same quiet, terrifying smile. "Can't sleep again?" she whispered. And I swear to you, in that moment, for the first time, I felt afraid of her. Not because she could hurt me, but because I realized she already had. The day I decided to leave was the day I realized I couldn't prove I was sane anymore. Every word out of my mouth sounded like an excuse. Every explanation sounded rehearsed. Claire had already rewritten the story, and by the time I understood that, everyone had already read her version. It started with her friends. People who used to greet me with warmth now looked at me like I was a ticking bomb. When I'd walk into a room, the conversation would die mid-sentence. One night, at a small get-together, I overheard her whispering in the kitchen. She said things like, "He hides things from me," and "Sometimes I don't know what he's capable of." And then, when she noticed me listening, she walked over, smiled, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Hey, baby, I was just telling them how proud I am of you for trying to work on your temper." I didn't even have one, but now everyone believed I did. It got worse. My boss called me into his office one morning. He said Claire had reached out to him, worried about my mental health. She told him I'd been having episodes, that I'd screamed at her, broken things. None of it was true, but I could see it in his eyes. He didn't know who to believe. When I confronted her that night, she didn't deny it. She just looked at me like I was a stranger. "I'm scared for you," she said softly. "You're losing control." That was her trick. She never shouted, never insulted, never said anything cruel directly. She just planted seeds. Tiny, poisonous seeds that grew in everyone's mind until I was the only one standing in the middle of the room, trying to convince them the garden was fake. I started noticing the way people looked at me. Cautious, sympathetic, distant. I was the unstable boyfriend, the one who lost it, the guy she tried to help. And she knew exactly what she was doing. One evening, I came home and found 2 police officers standing in my hallway. They said they'd gotten a call, a disturbance. They asked if Claire was safe. I laughed because it was ridiculous. I hadn't even been home. But there she was, standing behind them, tears in her eyes, whispering, "He gets like this sometimes." That was the moment I realized I wasn't fighting her anymore. I was fighting the version of me she'd created. After the officers left, I asked her why. Why go that far? Why ruin me? She looked at me with that calm, empty expression, the one she saved for moments when she wanted me to feel small, and said, "Because I need people to see what I see." "What do you see?" I asked. Her lips curved into that faint, chilling smile. "A man who can't survive without me." And that's when I understood. This wasn't love, it was ownership. She didn't want to destroy me out of hate. She wanted to make sure that even if I left, I'd never be able to exist without her shadow hanging over me. So I planned my escape quietly. I stopped arguing, stopped defending myself. I started recording her instead, the things she said, the contradictions, the moments when the mask slipped. And the night I finally decided to leave, I packed my things while she slept. I moved slowly, quietly, heart racing. I almost made it to the door. Then her voice cut through the silence. "Where are you going?" I turned around. She was sitting up in bed, smiling. Not surprised, not angry, just smiling. "I told you," she said, her voice calm and sharp as glass. "You can't leave until I say so." And that's when I saw her phone in her hand, recording again. I left that night anyway. I didn't even take much, just a bag, my wallet, and the few things I thought would remind me that I was still real. But when I walked out that door, I didn't know I was already too late. Claire had prepared for this moment long before I had the courage to act. The next morning, my phone started exploding with messages from friends, from coworkers, even from my sister. Some were angry, some confused, some heartbroken. One of them said, "How could you do that to her?" I didn't understand. Do what? Then I saw the posts. Claire had shared a long, emotional story online, a story about escaping an abusive relationship. There were photos, screenshots of fake messages I'd never sent, audio clips twisted from our old arguments, even bruises I couldn't explain, carefully placed where the camera could see them. The caption said, "I'm finally free." Tens of thousands of people believed her. The comments flooded in. "You're so strong. He sounds like a monster. You deserve better." And there, buried between the sympathy, were the words that gutted me the most. I always knew there was something off about him. That was it. My life, rewritten in real time. I tried to defend myself, but what could I say? The moment I tried to explain, I sounded exactly like the person she described. Defensive, angry, unstable. Every move I made was another piece of evidence in her story. She had built a cage out of my own reactions. My boss called again, this time not to check in, but to tell me the company was letting me go. "It's just not a good look right now," he said, his voice uneasy. I wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that she'd made it all up, but even I knew how it sounded. Days turned into weeks. The silence that followed was worse than the chaos. I stayed in a small motel outside the city, afraid to check my phone, afraid to see my own name trending beneath hers. I thought I'd hit rock bottom, but then she found me. I came back one evening and found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside were photos of us, laughing, kissing, holding hands, and a note that said, "No one will ever love you like I did. No one else will believe you." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And the part that broke me wasn't fear. It was that she was right. No one did believe me. To everyone else, I was the villain in her tragedy. She didn't just ruin my reputation. She took my story and made it her masterpiece. Every lie she told was crafted with surgical precision, and every person who comforted her became another soldier in her army of sympathy. One night, I got a call from private number. I hesitated before answering. It was her. "I miss you," she whispered. I froze. "You can come back," she said softly. "We can fix this. You just have to admit what you did." What I did, I repeated, voice shaking. She sighed. "You see, you're still in denial. You haven't healed yet." And then she hung up. That was the moment I realized she didn't want me back. She wanted to remind me that even when she wasn't there, she still owned the narrative. I looked in the mirror that night and barely recognized the man staring back. Hollow eyes, empty voice, no job, no friends, just a story that everyone believed except me. But somewhere in that reflection, under all the exhaustion and pain, there was still one thing she hadn't managed to take: the truth. And for the first time, I decided that was enough to start fighting back. I didn't have a plan at first, just anger, confusion, and a notebook filled with things no one else believed. But somewhere between all that chaos, I realized something. If she could build a story out of lies, then I could rebuild mine with the truth. I just had to start where she never expected me to, quietly. I began collecting what little I had left. The old voicemails where she slipped up and contradicted herself. Messages she forgot to delete that proved I never said the things she claimed. I went through every file, every audio clip, every trace she'd left behind. And slowly, piece by piece, the puzzle started to make sense. She hadn't just been careless. She'd been arrogant. She believed she was untouchable. I found one recording she'd made during an argument, the same one she'd used to prove I was violent. But this time, I listened all the way through. At the end, before she stopped recording, I heard her laugh. That low, satisfied laugh she only did when she thought she'd won. It was enough. I reached out to one of her old friends, someone who had quietly cut ties after things got too intense. She hesitated at first, but when I showed her what I'd found, she broke down. She'd seen the same manipulation, the same false tears. And just like that, the silence started to crack. Then came another, and another. It turned out I wasn't the only one she'd done this to. I was just the one who'd fallen the hardest. The truth spread slowly, quietly. Not viral, not public, but real. Word by word, message by message, people began to see the pattern. The story she'd built so carefully started to fall apart under the weight of her own contradictions. And then one day, I got a call from a journalist, someone who'd been following her abuse survivor posts online. He said he'd heard both sides and wanted to understand what really happened. I hesitated, part of me still afraid that telling the truth would sound like another defense. But I said yes. I told him everything, from the first lie to the last bruise on my reputation. I showed him the recordings, the deleted files, the proof she never thought anyone would find. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He just listened. And when the story finally came out, not on her feed, not through her followers, but through the facts, it didn't go viral. There were no hashtags, no trending posts, just quiet messages from strangers saying, "I believe you." That was enough. I didn't want revenge anymore. I didn't want to expose her to the world. I just wanted my reflection back. The man I used to be before she turned me into a villain for her performance. A few months later, I saw her again. Not in person, online. Another post. Another story. A new ex she claimed was manipulative, cruel, broken. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt distance, like watching a storm from behind glass. Because when you finally see the pattern, you stop stepping into it. Now, when I tell this story, it's not to get sympathy. It's a warning. Not every monster looks like one, and not every victim tells the truth. Sometimes, the person destroying you is the one who swears they're saving you. So if you ever find yourself doubting your own mind, stop. Step back. Listen to the silence between their words. That's where the truth lives. And that's where I finally found mine. Tell me, what would you do if the person you loved most convinced the whole world that you were the villain?